Hi there, welcome to the Great Gaming Cook-Off from Power-Ups to Power Meals at PAX Online. I'm Rebekah Valentine, I'm a senior staff writer at GamesIndustry.biz, and I have with me five of, honestly, my food idols. All five of the people surrounding me have transformed all kinds of video game food into real life recipes that you can make through various cookbooks, blogs, videos, and other projects that they have worked on. So I'm gonna let them introduce myself. I'm gonna start from, I guess, my left or right, or whatever direction this ends up being mirrored. We have Peter over here. Peter, who are you and what have you done?
Hi, my name is Peter J. Abreu. I am the lead chef and author of the Legends Cookbook. It's a Breath of the Wild inspired cookbook. He also worked on another cookbook, but I'll let Alyssa, we're there, I don't know, Alyssa will also talk about that one too. But yeah, I've did a Breath of the Wild inspired cookbook, and then I'm also working on a few other future projects with video game cooking.
Awesome. And actually on my screen, Chelsea is right above you, so I'll let Chelsea go next.
Hi, I'm Chelsea Monroe-Cassel. I've written a number of fictional food cookbooks, including a couple of video game cookbooks. I've done the Hearthstone, World of Warcraft, and Overwatch cookbooks.
Awesome. That throws it to Alyssa, who's next to Chelsea. Alyssa, how about you?
Hey, I'm Alyssa. I worked on Mother's Cookbook with Bryan, and I worked on Legends Cookbook with Peter. And we're also working on some future cookbooks, like Three Houses, some other ones in the future.
Awesome. Bryan, with your little pile of chefs behind you, how about you?
My name is Bryan Connor. I was the lead chef on Mother's Cookbook and run a blog called Level 1 Chef that I've been doing stuff for about 5 years now.
Awesome. And Victoria?
Hi, yeah, my name is Victoria Rosenthal. I have worked on the Fallout and Destiny cookbook. I also run a food blog that's now almost 9 years old called Pixelated Provisions, where weekly I try to recreate foods from many, many video games.
Awesome. Well, welcome and thank you all for joining me today. Anybody can start. It doesn't matter who wants to talk first, but I would love to hear from each of you about how you first stumbled into the very unusual and wonderful world of making video game food.
Do you want to go like the same way?
Any way you want. You started talking. Now you have to go.
Okay. So let's see. I had the idea of having a cooking show when I was in college, and I think I was playing Majora's Mask for like the 80th millionth time, and I said, I wanted to make Chateau Romani, so I had the idea of making a cooking show, and on my YouTube channel, which was normally at the time, I've done a lot. I was first a Pokemon tuber, and then I became a just video guy. We're talking about my favorite games, and then I was like, all right, fine, we're just gonna try cooking. So I did Cuckoo's Kitchen, which is my show, and I did Chateau Romani. I fell in love with the aspect of just trying to create something that's fictional into reality, because everything, in my opinion, has its roots connected somewhere in culture or just in someone's food, So I just, decided to do it, and all of a sudden, it started picking up traction, and people fell in love with the show, and I've been cooking video game food since, even though it has nothing to do with my career or profession, but it's a fun side hobby. Come on, don't be shy.
Okay. How'd you get into video game food?
I started a food blog back in 2011 originally, just for friends. I was like, you know what, let me start cooking food and doing things. That lasted about 3 months because I got bored. There was no theme or anything to it. And then I got that same itch a year later, and I was like, you know what? I really like video games. And there's a lot of food in video games. And this was actually around the time Guild Wars 2 came out. And the cooking system in that game was just so detailed. I was like, I could do some of these and recreate these to look like they do in the game. And then since then, I've just been making tons of food. I mean, I've done crazy things. Like now I'm experimenting with bug snacks that are bugs that like you can eat. Those are weird, and it's been a weird like process to try and figure that out. But I love how much developers have like put thought and care into putting food in games.
Yeah, I saw you
I
tweet
did like
the.
your cinnamon snails. Yeah.
I saw you tweet like right after, very shortly after the Bug Snacks trailer. I saw you tweet the googly eyes on like a cookie sheet or something.
It's funny because I do know I went to college with like half the team, half the young horses. So I've known them for a while. My husband's actually helping with some animations for it, so I do have like some insider knowledge. So I did know it was like going to be a thing. So I was like, oh, okay, this is perfect. I can't wait to make things. And then yeah, when I tried the snails, I was like, oh, we got real close, but these look real sad.
Oh.
It was just funny also doing it on stream too, because I was like, you know what, people will love this. And I was just like, yep, I'm on an episode of Nailed It right now.
That's amazing. Oh, we have a visitor.
Oh, God.
Amazing.
Hey,
I was worried mine
right.
would show up at some point too, but no, we're just
Hi.
here. What a great kitty.
All right. Maybe we can put him on the non-mic side here.
No, kitties
There
are
we go.
welcome.
All right. There we go.
Everyone loves a good stream cat.
11 o'clock is cuddle time.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right, who's next?
There we go. I can go since I'm a spectacle at the moment. I came at video game cooking sort of sideways, actually, because I did the Game of Thrones cookbook and food blog, which has now evolved into other things. It's in at the crossroads. And after that, I was approached and asked if I wanted to do the World of Warcraft cookbook. And as it so happens, I already had an enormous list of ideas of what a World of Warcraft cookbook would include. So I said yes, very excitedly. And so I've done a couple of video game cookbooks for Blizzard, which has been really fun. And every single one is a weird, different challenge, because some don't have food in them per se. So it's kind of tricksy, but fun. Always fun.
Alyssa and Bryan.
I can go next. So when I was growing up, I was really into a great game you might know called Earthbound, and there are a lot of very strange items in that game, food being one of them. There was a specific dish called Peanut Cheese Bar that is sold by Mr. Saturn, and I always thought that would be so weird to eat, and as that stuck in my head over some months, I was like, oh, well, I guess there's like peanut butter and cheddar crackers, like there might be a way to actually make that in real life. That would be neat. And then like that was it for so long. When I was in college, I was originally a chemistry major and cooking for myself for the first time. And I got really into a show called Good Eats by Alton Brown on Food Network. And I really liked how he explained cooking and cooking methods and different ingredients and everything with this kind of science, Bill Nye, the science guy background. And I felt like that was very accessible, and I liked that. It actually convinced me to shift completely my major from chemistry to culinary arts. And so I was doing that more often. I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool to kind of frame this culinary world in a reference that I know a lot about, video games. So I kind of revisited those ideas I had way back when, to see, now that I had some cooking knowledge under my belt, I'm like, oh, I'm going to see if I can make them and kind of frame them in this way for other gamers and such to try, or just to be interested and maybe like spark that interest in cooking.
Alyssa, how about you?
I've always loved to bake. I think my first experience cooking a video game food was when I was like a really young kid, and I wanted to make the Poffins from Pokemon, and they ended up being like these disgustingly off-red muffin type of thing. And I mean, I guess they weren't bad, but that was like my very first experience with it. And as I got older, I ended up getting into jobs where I could bake. I worked at this coffee shop where I did most of the baking throughout the day, and as long as I made banana bread and chocolate chip cookies, they left me all of the creative freedom I wanted to bake whatever I wanted. So I ended up realizing that what I wanted to do was get into some kind of profession where I would do some kind of pastry type thing. So I decided to go to culinary school, and one of my friends asked me if I wanted to start making cookbooks, and they just happened to be video game cookbooks.
So you all have done at least one cookbook. You all have either done blogs or videos or some other form of working through video game food. What is your process like? How do you, Chelsea? You say you make lists. How do you go about finding food and video games that you want to make and getting that whole thing started?
I start with a deep dive. Usually lasts a couple of weeks, depending on how familiar I am with the IP. I first look at, are there any foods in the game to begin with? If there are, awesome. That's so much easier than coming up with things from scratch. Because then you have maybe a sense of what things should taste like, what ingredients they include, what they should look like in some games. If not, you look at the world and you look at what the influences are, if there are any parallels to cultures or regions in our world, if there are no foods that you can cook in the game, maybe there are ingredients that you can get from kicking open a barrel, things like that. And then I sort of look at all these various lists that I've made and go from there. Something like the Overwatch cookbook was character based, so it pulls from our world a lot, which is a real setting, a real world, but kind of flips it a little bit to try to match the personalities of the various characters. Things like that. I mean, something like Elder Scrolls, there's a lot of food in there but not enough for a whole cookbook, so you kind of fill in the blanks based on what information you do have.
Right. Because I've worked through both your World of Warcraft and your Elder Scrolls cookbook, and the difference is really interesting because the World of Warcraft cookbook, I mean, there's so many different foods in World of Warcraft. Like, you can pull from all different kinds of cultures. There are some through lines, right? But there aren't it's not like consistent throughout everything. But then the Elder Scrolls cookbook, like, it's a lot of cheese, like lavender and honey and apples, because that's the stuff that you find just sitting around. Rye. Right. I learned a lot about rye.
The Elder Scrolls one. Right. It's finicky. Yeah.
But everyone else?
Well, for me and Alyssa, it's normally fun when we come up creating recipes because we're both stubborn and headstrong and like to yell at each other. So for me, I'm not a classically trained chef. I'm a pilot, so I've traveled a lot of the world. And when I approach a dish, the first thing I look at is what culture does this pull from. So for Breath of the Wild, there's different regions in the world and different, the Ritos, the Gorons. They have some culture in it that you can pull from and you can just then bring into your dish. So me and Alyssa will do the research, which we're doing for one of our upcoming books, and which was fun because it was a deep dive for history and all that stuff, and like we'll me and her will try to like see which would work better for like two different types of jams in one of the things that we were doing, and she likes to say I burnt the jam, which didn't happen. But we would first pull from either history or culture and then bring it in and then just test and to see what sticks. even if we find something that works, we want to try to improve on it. And to me, no dish is perfect. Everything can be improved on. I don't like the idea of perfection because I don't think anything is truly perfect. It's boring if it's perfect because you can't add on it, you can't improve it. So we go as much as to where people can have this amazing, tasty dish, and if they want to improve on it, they can. If they want to add a little bit more spice, or if they want to add a little bit less spice. From whatever culture we pull from, we want to kind of dive them into that culture so they can understand it. They can understand those spices. They can understand the history behind the dish, and then we bring that and whatever video game item it is and combine it. And it's a fun experience to just have a deep dive with all these different foods and different cultures. And I think it's fun. It's a fun time, even if there's a little bit of screaming involved.
I'd say my method's kind of similar to theirs, where I really like to look at different cultures and tell people, hey, it's not scary to go into different grocery stores. Just go figure it out. Go expand your pantry. Go do that. So you're able to like get a little piece of culture and kind of start your way into different styles of cooking. Because, I mean, there are a lot of gamers who are just used to eating very simple fast food and stuff. So I just want to... I know one of the big things I heard with the Fallout book was, there's too many spices in here. I had to buy too many weird things. And I'm like, well, one, I went weird with Fallout because I was like, let me make things that are kind of modern day, but kind of weird because we had a nuclear war happen. So things have to be slightly off. Nothing is exactly perfect. So throwing in extra spices in was a big thing. So it was definitely like, oh, okay. But I think the Destiny book does it extremely well. Because Destiny is not a game known for food. I think when I heard about the project, I was like, Destiny? Oh, yeah. I played the game. There's a lot of guns and spicy ramen. I was like, okay. And then it was funny. Right after they had their big dawning event, so they actually had a bunch of cookies. So I was like, perfect. You gave me some things. But it was a lot of diving in and looking at like specific characters, specific regions of the world, and going, okay, what kind of cuisines would have existed before, during the golden age that exists there? What kind of foods would these characters eat on their day-to-day lives? People who are out and about doing field work, or people who are living on a farm at that point. So a lot of it for me is just like looking at things. I much prefer games that have like food in it because it makes my life a little easier by a lot. Like Fallout was great because most of it are based off of items that are in the game. Had to do a similar thing with like you did with the Elder Scrolls book, where it's just like, okay, there are carrots, not a lot of like typical carrot recipes. Let me just add a few more carrot things or a few more different recipes that I'm like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. And to go back to what you said about the Destiny cookbook, I've taken a look at it, and you did a wonderful thing with that where you made it's also very much a story. Like there's a lot of storytelling involved in how the Destiny cookbook works. Alyssa, you're sideways now.
I know.
It's okay. I mean, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure you knew.
One of the big things for me when working on any of these projects, one of my favorite parts is making sure that there's kind of a story, that there's a character that's focused on. So with Destiny 1, we were told work with Ava Levante. Okay, that's the character we're going to focus on. These are the characters she interacts with. These are people she wouldn't know. So it's all her notes in there. So having her voice throughout it kind of helped. In the Fallout one, we took a little kind of, I say we because my husband helps a lot with this, because when we do deep dives, there's so much extra text to read, and it's just like, okay, help, let's go bounce this back and forth. But with the Fallout one, we had Vault Tech as the main voice, where the book was written pre-war, so right before all the bombs dropped, and then years later a vault dweller finds the book and makes notes and makes the changes. Oh, I can't find beef, I had to use Brahmin instead. Kind of little notes in there like that to connect it to the world.
Yeah. And Bryan did something similar with Mothers, I believe, because it's all in the voice of Mom.
Oh. Yeah, so for that cookbook, we had a whole team. I mainly tackled the recipes, but it was written from the point of view of Ness's mom. That was kind of our angle for that, and Hilary Fromell should be given all the credit for that. It is beautifully written. I think that the main question that I grapple with when I decide to do a new item is whether or not it's going to be accurate to the game world or accessible to people that might want to make it, because sometimes those things are very far apart. And so in the Mother's Cookbook, we did like a difficulty system because some of the things are, Ness starts out in Americana, so everything is pretty close to home, at least anyone that lives in the USA. Whereas later in the book, branches out and goes to these different locales, which, as was stated earlier, all are steeped in different cultures, different ingredients, different cooking methods, and that's when it starts to get a little more difficult. But I wanted to still, be as accurate as I could be, because I think that is the fun. I mean, some people do entire cookbooks, but not everyone will cook every single dish. So I wanted there to be some.
Sorry.
No, it's great.
Peter and Alyssa are next. I'm starting Legends Cookbook once I here in a couple months, so
Oh
they're
boy.
they're gonna have to deal with seeing me mess up like half of their cookbook.
No, but that's great to try everything, but that's not going to be everyone. Some people are just going to really like the game, and then it's like, oh, I can do these kind of safe recipes with ingredients that I already have, but maybe they get a little itch to do more, and then they can expand outward and go to grocery stores and expand the pantry, like Victoria said. So we also have very difficult recipes in Mother's Cookbook for those people who want them, and I feel like that's really the balance that you need to do, like ones that are still iconic but accessible, but also ones that are accurate to the game world.
Alyssa, how about you?
Sorry, my bird keeps screaming, so I had to turn my mic
That's
off.
awesome. All the pet invasions today.
Whenever I look at recipes, I kind of look at what's going to be, first of all, the most fun to make. So, visually, is this the most attractive thing? When you see something stand out in a video game, is it brightly colored? Is it, the cake in Kirby, in one of the Kirby games, I'm talking about, the strawberry cake?
Oh, yeah.
Objectively,
the Helen of Troy.
Everybody wants that cake. So to make that cake, which I haven't made it yet and I want to, I think most people would be on board. You can pick that out and say, okay, let's make that. And you can go through some of the other things and be like, okay, let's make that, and start off with what's going to be fan favorites. And then from there, okay, what else would be interesting? And then, for the people that really just want to be adventurous with cooking, but maybe it's the lesser known items in the game, but they still, they're still willing to give it a try. But I definitely like pastry more than I like cooking, so of course I'm going to be looking more at what are more of the cakes in the game, and what are more of the cookies in the game, and I want to find the weird cute ice cream and things like that. That's gonna be what I'm looking for.
That's actually a really wonderful segue, because thinking about you saying that, I flipped through the Legends Cookbook and it's got there's drinks with edible glitter in them, and there's the grand like cake things and these beautiful like meat dishes. But then there's also a section of kind of alarming looking monster food that's probably very tasty. But when I think about that in the game, I'm like, that's got like bones in it. And it's very purple. And I know Peter actually has told me a story about trying to make the dubious food look incredibly bad, but taste incredibly good. So I'd love to hear from you all. What are some of the weirdest things that you have had to make, either for a cookbook or a blog or for any of the other projects that you've worked on?
Oh, I want to hear that story from Peter.
Yeah.
Well, it's a really nice story because it goes back in. You told me when I was interviewing you for You As Gamer, like you told me this really nice story about, you know, wanting people to look at food of different cultures that may not look familiar to them and, you know, be willing to try it.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, for me, I lived in Daytona Beach for 6 years for school, and some Southerners don't like Hispanic food, so they look at it and they think it's like very weird looking, even like, you know, like, oh, too spicy, even though it has no spice in it. So down there, my whole goal and idea was I have a bunch of these friends who are pilots, and they'll eat is like Chick-fil-A and fast food and frozen TV dinners, and like I want to get them into food. I want them to enjoy my culture, and I want, you know, to learn about their culture. So when Breath of the Wild came out and I was looking at all the ingredients and all that stuff and all the recipes, of course there's wild stuff like the monster stuff, but dubious food was one of the things that was just standing out, where it was disgusting, right? If I'm going to put something in my cookbook, though, I don't want it to be disgusting. I want to kind of, you know, mold it into, it could look gross, but it can taste great. Because I feel like a lot of people, when they cook stuff from a cookbook or whatever, they see the photo and they can't exactly replicate it. And then, you know, they kind of get discouraged because it's like, oh, it might not look like it, so it probably won't taste like it, which is not the case at all. You can make something from the cookbook, right? And the first time you make it, you'll probably plate it just like how it is in the book. And then the next time you're going to say, I don't want to do all that work. I'm just going to put it together, and that's what I'm going to have for dinner. Which reminds me of someone did it was like an inspired recipe. It was huevos rancheros, which was, all right, I want to kind of pull from like the Gorons. You know, they eat rocks. So putting like maybe meatballs and huevos rancheros, and this is just the Italian and the Spanish in me combining. So it was like sauce and there's eggs, so it kind of looks like lava. And the first time someone sent it to us on Twitter and in our Discord, they plated it super nicely, and the next time they were just like, whatever, I'm just gonna throw it on the plate, and this is what I'm having for breakfast, because that's how it is for me. Like, you know, I would, you know, for the books, I make sure that I can make it as appealing and beautiful. But when I'm making it for dinner, I just gonna eat, and I'm just gonna enjoy it. So with the dubious food, that was where it's something where it's gonna look disgusting all the time. But to research French cuisine, because like I said, I don't have a background in cooking, so a bunch of my knowledge comes from cookbooks and watching. For me, my biggest inspiration was Anthony Bourdain. So watching Parts Unknown and just seeing him dive into different cultures and showing you that, you know, this culture's food might look disgusting to you, but once it hits your taste buds, your taste buds are going to explode with flavor, and you're going to absolutely love it. So for me, it doesn't matter if it's ugly, it matters if it tastes good, because at the end of the day, I feel like if you have a good meal, you're going to really have a good day.
I always say it's important for people to at least try something once. Don't matter what it looked like or anything. Just give a try. You might find something that you truly love that you've never had. So I try my best to try as much food as I can. Yeah.
That's why go ahead, sorry.
Good. No, sorry. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, that's why doing those cookbook projects has been so much fun, because my rule is I have to try to make it, even if it comes out awful, and I have to take a bite of it. I even tried the doggy biscuits. Which are for dogs.
They are. I've made those because I made a batch for kanji, and I too tried it. I'm like, yep, these taste like bland.
Yep, but
Mhm.
they're
Kanji
dogs.
loved them.
The dog loved them, which was the
He
point.
loved them.
Yeah, but it's introduced me to, like, all of the cooking that I've done from all of your respective work has, like, introduced me to so many different kinds of foods that I, like, never I would have never just even thought to try otherwise. Like, Brian, I never would have thought to go to a Middle Eastern grocery and specifically seek out Malakaya leaves for Malakaya soup. Like, it just would not have occurred to me. But now I have tried it. It was great. It was delicious.
I'm glad you liked it. My fiance, that was probably her most hated dish
Oh, no.
because the jute leaves, just when they boil, they make like such a snotty consistency.
It was not the leftovers the next day were not great, texture wise. But the day that I made them were very good.
It's kind of like the same thing with okra.
Oh,
It just gives it
yeah.
like the.
Anyway, sorry, we got off because that was a great story about dubious food. But I do still want to hear everybody just the most bizarre thing that they have had to seek out and make and put together from any of their projects.
I guess I could say this was before the Fallout cookbook. I actually had a Fallout recipe on my site, and I was like, I'm going to make the Wasteland omelet. It is the one recipe on my website that I very specifically say, I don't recommend you make this. Like, it says do not make this. But I was like, okay, the required ingredients in the game were the Blamco mac and cheese. So I said, okay, we'll do a cheese sauce, kind of similar for a mac and cheese. Crunchy mud fruit. I decided, okay, kind of looks like an apple, would be a little spoiled, so let's add onion in there. Okay, we'll go with that. And the last piece was lake lurk meat, which I was like, okay, we'll do salmon. We'll combine all these things. It's edible, but it is a bizarre set of flavors that just do not pair well. But I was like, this looks like the in-game item. This probably tastes like the in-game item. So it's definitely one of those like, wow, that might have been one of the recipes that maybe convinced them that I would be a good candidate for a Fallout cookbook. But I definitely did not include that in the cookbook.
Right. Anyone else have any weird ones?
I did. So probably the weirdest one in Mother's cookbook is the piggy jelly, again, a food from Mr. Saturn. And so another thing that I didn't mention about when you're developing recipes is at least in a game like Earthbound that was made in Japan and localized for the US, they changed a lot of stuff, and food was one of them. So in the Japanese Mother 2, piggy jelly is pig yokon or pork yokon. Yokon is a sweeter kind of firm jellied item. It's there's not really that much on this side of the world that tastes like it. It kind of tastes like a jelly bean. Almost, maybe like a little soft. Not a jelly bean, sorry. Like those like orange slice candies that you get with all the sugar around them. It's like that kind of consistency. It's made with agar. It tastes good, and they do have. They usually do, like. I'm blanking here. They do red bean. Yokon, and they do sweet potato yokon now. So I'm like, sweet potato yokon and sweet potato pork, that can go together, probably. But there is artwork for this in the Mother 2 guide, and it is just green, and it just looks like a long pig snout that you would just slice off of. And I'm like, no. We're not going to do that at all. We're just going to do piggy jelly for Earthbound. So I had to kind of start again from square one. I was like, piggy jelly, what could that be? It's not going to be like, I didn't want it to be a condiment because it seems like a cop-out. Like, you could do bacon jam and just like call it a day.
I also don't want a jar of that in my fridge for a month.
I gave you plenty other jars.
I still have some.
So I was like, what? where is the weird food? And I said, like, I have some old cookbooks. So I pull out my like 1950s, 1960s cookbook and just start going through and be like, give me some inspiration. And they did have a lot of jellied items back then, like aspics you may have heard of, which is like a savory jello jiggler with stuff stuck in it, which is no longer popular and for a really good reason. So I'm like, well, this could work because it's a savory jello kind of thing, and I can like work with ham in it. So it ended up being pork stock, thickened or set with gelatin, and cut up ham in it with hard-boiled egg, and it taste is there. Texture was always going to be weird. Great with mustard. But the process to get to there, I did like a foamed ham plate that you're supposed to dip chips into. I did that on stream, and I still, like, people in my Discord still reference the ham foam to this day, and I just cannot escape it. It was so bad. But there's a lot of different, like, God bless the broken road that brings you to like something edible.
Anyone else have any weird food stories?
I had one from the first Warcraft cookbook that didn't make it into the finished version. Sort of similar to that Fallout omelet, I think, in terms of, yeah, technically you could eat it. So my parents live up the hill from me, and when I'm working on a cookbook, we often have more food than just my husband and I can eat. So they are sort of ancillary taste testers, and they're not the best taste testers in that they're always complimentary of everything I give them. And so it's like, well, all right. Even they were pretty critical. I think it was the Mogu fish stew, and it includes salmon, which seems to be where things maybe go a little skewy sometimes. It also has crocolisk, which I was like, oh, okay, so crocodile or alligator, you could get alligator meat. Let's just test it with chicken in the meantime before we go through all the expense of getting crocodile or alligator meat. And in part, I chose it because it, you know, in the in-game image, it's like plated in this little mini pumpkin. It's beautiful. It's so appealing. And I just thought, how fun would that be to serve it in this pumpkin? It'd be instant hit for the photo. It was just god awful. It was like, it was so terrible. You would only eat it in a Fallout kind of a world. Like, it just, like, the salmon pumpkin chicken, there's some other weird thing that went in there, and it just did not work. Somebody better in the kitchen than I am could maybe get it there, but I was just like, no, we could put like a vegetable stew in a pumpkin just as easily, and everyone would be much happier. So that one has kind of haunted me, because I don't like being defeated by these dishes, but oof.
I had a really bad one with we were working on a cookbook for basically medieval type recipes, so I delved really deep into learning about how to bake medieval type things and replace one ingredient with another ingredient to make it medieval. And so I was making savory shortbread, and one of the options was replacing butter, because butter was like a rich person's thing, with an animal fat. So I was like, I have bacon fat in my freezer. I'll use bacon fat and half brown sugar, and I'll add the spices, which was like cinnamon and clove and whatever else. It's black pepper. It's a lot of very spicy things, and it smelled great in the oven. And when it came out, collectively my family just decided it was one of the most disgusting things I had ever made.
I don't recommend. A lot of savory shortbread is really good. Don't let that put you off with savory shortbread. But bacon fat is not a good replacement for butter.
I will keep that in mind. On a slightly brighter topic, again, Peter and Alyssa, I mentioned I had been thumbing through the Legends cookbook, and you've got a lot of like very magical looking things in there, and you all have made things that are a little more magical. Bryan, you've got a whole slew of magic recipes in the Mother's Cookbook. How do you make food that is fantastical in some way, when it's not just, oh, they're eating like a beef stew or whatever, like it's a potion, or it's something that like has some sort of mystical video gamey quality to it? What's your go-to for making magic?
So for the Earthbound cookbook, once again, there's no art for those items in the game, so it's really up to me to give them a form. And I remember just deciding, there's a place called Magicant in the game that is like very pink. So all of my magic food is going to be pink. And that was my one rule. And so each one is gets pink from a different berry, or maybe a pink lemonade mix, so on and so forth. So I just thought like, they're mostly desserts where pink is an okay color. There's not like a pink sandwich. There's a blue sandwich, but there's pink is mostly saved for the desserts. And I think it gave them all like, an identity, because there are a lot of food have the magic prefix on them. So that was what I did.
I mean, potions being an example, in my mind, I'm always like, okay, well, these characters get this sudden courage to continue forward and heal up. A lot of times I'll combine a fruit or something that's going to like give good nutrition, and I feel like you need to add alcohol in there because they're going to keep charging forward, and that's probably the closest. I am not a big drinker, so always coming up with like mixed drinks. I have a lot of friends that'll help me out, so I'm like, it makes sense. You're going to run in and do something stupid, but you're going to be heroic while you do it.
Yeah, I agree. Alcohol has a big part in magical dishes, because you want to feel magical after you have one. So it's like the red potion sangria. I love sangria. Love it. And I'm not a big drinker, but give me some sangria. And I know a lot of people are afraid when it comes to like potions and stuff, because they're afraid to taste the alcohol, or so with sangria you can make it taste like a fruit punch, but it will punch you as soon as you stand up, because if it is strong, it is strong. So the red potion, for me, I feel like it will make you feel magical. Just don't drink the whole container. That's why Link only has one bottle, because they don't give him the whole container to run around with, or he wouldn't have made it to the castle to save Zelda or anything. He would have been passed out on the ground.
What is, for each of you, the absolute most important thing for a video game cookbook, like the actual book, to be for people? Like what is the most important thing to take into consideration when you're putting one of those together?
For me, it is a way for either experts or beginners to cook. That's what the goal was for Legends. And every future project we do is I don't want you to look at a book and be like, oh, wow, I need years of culinary school to make this. Like, no, I want you to dive into it if you've never boiled water before. I mean, the first recipe in Legends is legit how to boil water, because I hate the expression "I can't boil water," because it is so bizarre to me that that's a thing. So that is the first. You open up Legends, first thing, how to boil water is hard-boiled eggs. You will never have to use that excuse again. So I want also the books to be kind of a learning guide. So we have different my book is up there, and I'm trying to think off the top of my head what's in it. We have different meat cuts. We have, conversion charts, all that stuff. So you can use this book as a way to journey your culinary adventure. It should be open to everyone. I feel like my biggest gripe with some cookbooks is you go and you see some of these celebrity cookbooks and stuff, and they're very aimed towards a specific demographic of you need to cook like this in order to eat like this, which is not true. I want to make something where, for example, Bryan is a classically trained chef. Like, he can pick up the book and be like, hey, I can make this. And then you can have someone like
Me.
off the top of like you, Rebekah. You pick it up and you'd be like, wow, this is different. But you can look at the same dish, like, for example, the dubious food. Bryan can understand where it comes from in the culinary scene. You can understand where it comes from the video game scene, and you can both make it and have a good time making it, because it should be fair game for pros or beginners in every single cookbook. A book shouldn't scare people away. It should invite people in to actually want to make as much as they can in these delicious books.
Yeah, I think you hit it perfectly.
Yeah.
That's kind of a really big thing with the books, because I do know I've seen it a lot with people getting the Destiny book. Oh, I love Destiny. I have to have every item that Bungie releases, and I need this in my library. And then they look through and they're like, oh, I could actually make some of these. I have a very similar where there's easy recipes that people could explore. And then there is a very hard recipe in there that I think someone who's not been in the kitchen long enough might need a few minutes or a few attempts to make it look like it does in the book. I do think the other important thing, because they are video game related, is that voice that exists, kind of connecting it to the world, making sure that even if they're not going to cook from it, they have pretty pictures and they have little lore tidbits. Because I've seen posts on Reddit for Destiny thing, oh, I looked through the book and here's all these extra lore bits that we now know about the Drifter because of the cookbook notes. I'm like, that's kind of cool. It's actually all stuff that's in the game, but sure, thanks.
I ran into that with Overwatch also, because that's a big criticism with Overwatch is we want more lore. And so people have been trawling through the cookbook and they're like, did you know about Soldier 76's grandmother? And I'm just like, whoa, no pressure. Like, but overall, I absolutely agree with all of that. And it's frustrating in some ways, because no matter how much you try to get both the super easy and the super hard recipes all in there, you will inevitably get criticisms that the book is both too easy and just too difficult. And it's just like, I mean, it can't, but as Bryan was saying also earlier, the sort of finding that balance between authentic to the world and actually approachable. So it's a lot of moving parts, I think, to try and balance in terms of accessibility, both for cooking skill and ingredients and everything else like that. And is it true to the world? Because nothing makes me angrier in this world, I think, than Boba Fettuccine. I just can't. I can't do it. I see red. Where you take like a normal thing and you're like, now it's video game food because it has a funny name. It's not. It's just a grilled cheese sandwich, or it's just, you haven't gone that extra step to, I think, defamiliarize something that we know and like, and then sort of reframe it within that video game world.
That's actually, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say what you were saying about making your stuff very accessible. That the whole reason why I started working through everybody's video game cookbooks is because I, an absolute fool, on Christmas Eve. Well, I received the World of Warcraft cookbook because I liked World of Warcraft as a gift on Christmas Eve, and like an absolute fool, I had thawed my Christmas turkey for my parents correctly, but I had not made any plans for how I was actually going to cook the thing the next day. And I saw the turkey on the front cover of the World of Warcraft cookbook, and I thought, I guess we'll just see if I could do this. And I opened it up, and I had every ingredient for that thing, and it didn't look horribly difficult. And I can make this, and I did. And it was just all like from there. I was like, maybe I can make more things, and it just snowballed from there.
Oh, phew. That one always makes me so nervous because every year around Thanksgiving, I see so many people online being like, well, it's time to cook my very first Thanksgiving dinner for the whole family. And I'm like, oh, God, please work, please work, please work.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bryan, you were going to.
Oh, I wanted to touch on something that Chelsea said that is an interesting challenge. Making mediocre food and branding it as video game food, mediocre in the sense of like nothing special. It can be difficult to. There was in Mother's Cookbook. There's like 4 or 5 burger recipes, of which I've been criticized for too many burgers. But
They're great. They're great.
That's my favorite review on Fangamer. It's just like nothing else. They looked at your book and that's what they can see. Right. That was too many burgers. It's like the IGN 7.8 too much water. It's just too many burgers for Mother's Cookbook.
You know what? You have nothing to apologize for.
No. I know how to make a good burger now, thanks to you.
The thing is that I wanted to do that, but make them all different in some way so you could find some nuance in, like, why is this the regular burger, whereas this one is the mammoth burger, and so on. There's like a bologna sandwich in the book that is like the clumsy robot bologna sandwich. So it's like, what can you do with that to give it breathe some life into it, breathe some gamer life into it. And I was like, oh, well, if you like had to stack it in a certain way, it would take like, you'd have to be dexterous, and like, if you were clumsy, it wouldn't work very well. But so like, just trying to like imbue these maybe not so amazing dishes with some of the energy of the game world is definitely a challenge, especially if you're trying to be comprehensive with the menu in the game.
I think that hopefully by the end of your cookbook is just that you have things that you can be proud of. I think no matter how trained you are in cooking, whether you've gone to school for a few years, you haven't gone to school, or you've gone to school for a long time, there's just still the same feeling that you get when you've made something, even if it's just like a loaf of bread or something really, really big that you're just like, I made this. And it's really cool when it's something special that someone can recognize from something. And I think that's what makes all of our cookbooks really unique, is that when someone is done with it, they can say, I made this. And then someone can be like, that's the thing from Pick Your Game. And it makes you feel good. It makes everyone feel good because they get to see something that they like. Everyone likes looking at food pictures. That's, you know what I mean? Like, there's millions of them online. That's what our cookbooks are for. People like looking at our food pictures. It makes you feel good. That's what I hope the cookbooks are for, is that you can be proud of baking something, even if it's small or big.
We are bumping up on time, and that is like the absolute perfect note to end on. So, Peter, if people wanted to find out what kinds of food things you were working on, where would they be able to find you?
So you can find me on 3 places. Either my Twitter handle. My Twitter handle is pretty much every handle. So just look at Poneapples. And for cookbook stuff, that's not what me and Alyssa will be working on. It would be at the Legends Cookbook. And if you enjoy watching cooking shows that are like cooking video shows, you can check out Cuckoo's Kitchen on YouTube, where it's me and Alyssa. We both have 2 different types of Cuckoo's Kitchen shows in there. Mine is more me going bada bing, bada boom, and hers is more Alyssa charming. So those are the three places you can find me.
Chelsea, how about you?
I'm on Twitter and Facebook. My blog, inatthecrossroads.com. Somewhat sparsely updated these days, but we're trying to get back in there. But there are a lot of good old recipes that people could explore in the meantime. I have Instagram too, but it's mostly like chicken and weird bug photos, so not so much
Live
cooking related,
chickens.
but yes, and funny ducks. So that's like behind the scenes kind of, but less of the actual cooking going on.
Alyssa, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at kittytank. You can also find me on Instagram, which I don't really use that much. It's also kittytank. And same thing, Legends Cookbook, everything Peter said.
Bryan?
So I have a couple. Like I said in the beginning, I run a blog called Level 1 Chef. That's the word level, the number one, and then the word chef.com. And that had most of all of my recipes pre-Mother's Cookbook. We do have a Mother's Cookbook Twitter. We have my Twitter, which is Level 1 Chef, which is LVL, the number one _ the word chef. And probably the coolest place and the most active place you can find me or things related to me is at Bard and Baker. That's the Twitter and Instagram handle, and we also have bardandbaker.com. This is the board game cafe that I run with my fiance Charlotte, and that is kind of what I've been pouring my entire life into after Mother's Cookbook. So we are a real place, a real cafe that you could come if the world wasn't exploding. We'll be there after all this, but we are a board game cafe. We have over 750 board games to play. We do all of our baking in-house. We do our own bread, sandwiches, lots of stuff. And the one thing that I kind of got back into the video game recipes were these dinners, these seated dinners called Pixelated, which they're for 20 people. And we were doing them every month, and I wanted to mention this because it's not only my recipes that we do. I believe the first Pixelated dinner we had at the cafe was all Stardew Valley, and then the second Pixelated was food from Chelsea's World of Warcraft cookbook.
And I actually got to go, and it was
that she actually came.
Oh, I'm so
to.
glad you made it! I
Yeah.
remember when we had talked, you weren't sure. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
No, and I
actually,
was like, oh, I'm going to go back. And then, the
Yeah,
world.
well,
So,
yeah.
dibs.
I actually crossed paths with Chelsea like 10 years ago at a steampunk convention while she was working on the Game of Thrones cookbook. So just like, what a small world.
I know, so random. It's great, though.
And then I've also done things from Victoria's Fallout cookbook. That was a smaller version because that's right when stuff was getting really weird. So I still want to do a full
perfect. Fallout and the world's falling apart.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We were talking with each other. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go up and I'll visit in May. The world will be happy. And then February came around. I was like, the world's not gonna be happy. It seems.
Yeah. So we actually did a meal kit that were delivered to houses with the ingredients so people could make it at home while they watched me on stream. And it was cool because everyone was in their little vault, and I made a perfectly preserved pie that I put in a to-go container, and it was just like, that one's already done because you got it from the vending machine. So it kind of worked out pretty good.
That's really cool. No.
But yeah, that's me.
One of those Pixelated things is on my bucket list one of these days. I'll get out there.
And I'll definitely be doing a Legends Cookbook one.
Oh boy!
If you guys want to come through.
Well,
now that it's out.
I'll fly in.
Yeah,
There's an airport nearby you. I'm assuming.
there is.
Victoria, how about
Yeah.
you?
You can find me on Twitter at Pixelated Vika. On Twitch, I stream cooking streams weekly. At least one I try to do. Same tag, Pixelated Vika. Instagram, you'll find more pictures of kanji and food. That one's Pixelated Provisions, I believe. And then you could always visit my website, pixelatedprovisions.com, where I try to weekly have a new recipe. Site's been going for a while, so there's, I believe, over 300 recipes for your perusing. Free content for you.
All right. And if you, for some reason, want to watch an amateur chef attempt to work through these and more recipes, I'm on Twitter at Duck Valentine. I also have an upcoming podcast called The Cozy Wood Kitchenette, which is me attempting to make tasty recipes inspired by your favorite games and chat with the nerds responsible for those foods existing in the first place. It's coming this fall. It's not out yet, but stay tuned for that. That's at Cozy Wood Kitchen. Thank you all so much for being here and doing this. This has been a delight. And thank you to everybody watching. Go cook something nice for yourself.